Two things I want to talk about in the gaming news world this Wednesday. The first involves, of course, Microsoft Xbox. They've been in the news quite a bit recently, and the most recent thing, of course, comes to this big Xbox Game Pass price hike, with Xbox jacking the price up for Game Pass Ultimate, essentially the best tier, the most preferred tier by a lot of gamers, I assume, by 50%. It's insane. It's not a good move. In my opinion, it's a lot of the chickens coming home to roost, I think, with Xbox going so big and investing so heavily in Xbox Game Pass and making it such an attractive offer while also spending tons of money and acquiring Activision and putting Call of Duty on Game Pass and stuff like that, that now it's like essentially it was too good to be true, and they're jacking the price up because the way I look at it, like, yes, obviously the economy and everything is more expensive and everything sucks, but also, you know, I guess they're not selling enough hardware. They need to make their money somewhere, and it's just off-putting. It feels greedy, especially when I talk about how great everything is going for them and how great Xbox Game Pass is doing. Now we have something like this where, look, we see subscription increases all the time, but an increase in a subscription this much is unprecedented, I think. I think if you subscribe to Netflix or HBO Max or whatever, and it was suddenly going to jump 50% in price, and especially something over a $30 mark for a monthly subscription, I think most people are rightfully going to really think hard on that and not just go, oh man, it went up, this sucks. This goes to the point where you're like, hang on, that's so much. Do I even need that? I think it still comes down to the individual person and how many games you take advantage of on Game Pass, and if you're taking advantage of new games. And if you don't care about ownership and you buy digitally, maybe you can still swallow this subscription sometimes, maybe not even every month, but just sometimes, you know, activating, renewing. But I think for most people, you know, it's really not really feeling like the best deal in gaming anymore. Now, look, this whole Xbox Game Pass thing has already been talked about to death. We've talked about it on Game Ranks. I've talked about it in some other places, but it's really the big picture thing with Microsoft and Xbox that I thought was really interesting, because if you are paying attention to the news and shit like that, last weekend, a rumor spun up from some leaker, Sneaker SO, who I don't have too much experience with, but it spread like wildfire. Essentially, they said that, according to their sources, Xbox is actually backing away from hardware. Unlike what they have previously said, where they're still going to do hardware after Xbox Series X and S, this leaker suggested that is now not the case, and there is a pivot. Reporting from WCCF Tech, they essentially said that this rumor comes from leaker Sneakers SO, who is that a reference to the Sneakers video game? Anyway. Who previously leaked Xbox's initial plans to start porting its games to other consoles. In a post on NeoGAF, the leaker wrote that the plans to actually introduce the next Xbox hardware went from being really concrete to up in the air. That absolutely spread like wildfire. And of course, the bad news spreads way quicker than like a correction or an update or anything like that. Microsoft has come out and said that they are still committed to hardware, and they pointed specifically to their deal that they announced last year with AMD, where AMD would be providing chipsets for future Xbox hardware. But that could, you know, mean more than just an Xbox console. It could be like a Windows type device, a Windows Xbox brand device. It could be something like a ROG Ally X type thing. I don't know, but they've said that that's not the case. Now, before we keep yapping, this video is sponsored by Vessi. If you don't know, if you're not aware, Vessi provides dependable, comfortable footwear that's also 100% waterproof, but it doesn't feel like a waterproof shoe. They got all different kinds of shapes, colors, and sizes for every person, every situation, but check out one of my favorites. It's the Stormburst. These come in both low and high tops. I actually got a fresh pair right here that I've been rocking. These are the high tops, but they're grippy, but also stretchy and comfortable at the same time. But they're really kind of like the go-to all-rounders. I recently went to Ireland, and exploring that country, I was prepared for anything with these shoes. Whether I was in the city or out in nature or on the coast by the beach, I was set because they're comfortable all day. But like I said, with like the thicker, grippier soles and everything, they're designed for go anywhere, do anything. Specifically in Ireland, where it rains, A lot. It meant that no matter where I was completely covered and my feet stayed dry for a really long trip, and that's essential. It sounds silly, but when you don't have to worry about your shoes getting wet, like there's like a new degree of freedom. You can step anywhere, do anything. So if you want to check out the Vessi Stormburst or any other shoes they have, now is definitely the time. You can shop worry-free thanks to 30-day returns and exchanges. Plus, it's backed by a 1-year warranty. So if you want to check them out, click the link in the description down below or the QR code. It is vessi.com/onjake. There you'll get 15% off your first pair at checkout. Again, that is vessi.com/onjake for 15% off your first pair at checkout. Go check them out. Get wearing them, have fun, stay dry, and big thanks to Vessi for sponsoring this video. Now back to what I was saying. But I think, and I'm not the only one to point this out, but I do think there is something in the fact that this leak, whether it was true or not, let's say it is false, it's spread like wildfire and everybody was ready to believe it because it just feels like the writing is on the wall. I think the consumer goodwill for Xbox has dropped quite a bit, and I am not shitting on Xbox. I grew up as like a Nintendo PlayStation fan, but bought the original Xbox the moment I saw Halo. Then, like a lot of people, as much as I love PlayStation 2, I kind of fell into an Xbox 360 world. I still tend to review and enjoy new Xbox Game Studios game, right? I'm not shitting on Xbox because if anything, they've made my job really interesting the last couple of years with experimentation with cloud, with how they've done the series rollout, with Game Pass, stuff like that. Like, I don't want to see Xbox fail. It's interesting that this rumor came out and everyone was like, yep, there it is. Xbox is out. Because again, I think a very rapid loss of consumer goodwill. The console stuff, the porting to other platforms, the kind of like opening the floodgates, kind of loosening things up, the Xbox Game Pass price increase, the multiple hardware price increases. I think a lot of people are just like, all right, like what is this brand right now? Is it growing pains or is it the slow decline? I don't know for sure, but I could imagine Xbox eventually going to the point of Sega and still remaining a gaming brand in many ways, many complex and interesting ways, but not in a way where they are a massive platform holder and a hardware manufacturer. I don't know if it's going to go that way, but I can't help but be kind of bummed out that we're even talking about it at this point, right? Like, I usually talk about fun stuff on this channel, but yeah, I think it sucks, especially if you're someone who's only invested in the Xbox ecosystem, number one. But more importantly, number two, like, I grew up before Xbox existed, but I thought gaming was a much better place when Xbox did come onto the scene, because there was more going on. As much as I like to shit on the console wars and just how silly sometimes that gets, on the flip side, it did encourage PlayStation to try things. And, you had Xbox vying for these things and PlayStation. Everybody was trying to get your attention and your dollar. And with Xbox even potentially out of the mix, that's disappointing because if you're not a Nintendo person, you're kind of just left with PlayStation and PC, where PC is kind of its own weird thing, and then PlayStation is just one corporation holding a lot of chips, essentially. All I can say is, look, if Xbox is still staying in the hardware game, like they have suggested, and, they did sign that multi-year agreement with AMD, regardless, things are changing some way, shape, or form. Xbox has already changed. I think it will continue to change. It's whether or not it's an evolution, a fizzling out, like a real change up, I don't know for sure. Now, the other news story I wanted to talk about this week that hit the scene actually kind of relates to all the Xbox stuff, but a little bit more big picture if you're not like an Xbox person. This comes from VGC. More than 60% of US players only buy 2 games or fewer per year, a survey finds. This is VGC. All the sources and stuff are linked in the description down below. They sourced Circana's Matt Piscatella, an analyst at an analyst firm, his data for Q3 2025 Future of Video Games survey. So according to the data, according to VGC, breaking it down, 18% of players in the US buy a new video game about once every 6 months, while 12% buy one about once a year. The survey also found that 33% of players buy a new game less often than once per year, meaning a combined 63% of players buy 2 games or fewer every year. Now, on the other end of the scale, 22% of players buy a new game around once every 3 months, with 10% saying they buy one roughly every month. Just 4% said they buy more than one game a month. Now, that's interesting because like I feel like that percentage is all these percentages. Like I threw a lot of percentages at you, but it's crazy in a lot of aspects because even in this world, like I think conversation and like video game this, like you watching this or you listening to podcasts doesn't always translate to sales, right? Like people love following video games like the Mets and the Yankees. It doesn't mean necessarily that they're buying season pass tickets to Shea Stadium. It's not even called Shea Stadium anymore. I'm so old. I just keep calling it Shea Stadium. God. But the note from Matt Piscatella says hyper enthusiast, price insensitive players are really keeping things going, especially in the non-free to play gaming space. Now so the hardcore gamers are buying full priced games when they come out because they're hardcore gamers or they're enthusiasts or expendable income, whatever factors, right? They're also the ones that are buying the special editions or the overpriced editions and shit like that, right? And apparently that's keeping things afloat in a lot of ways. But I think the flip side is really interesting, right? Like, let's unpack the big thing. 60% of US game players only buy 2 games or fewer per year. That does not surprise me when you look at the real landscape. When you go outside and talk to a kid, you know, a little kid or a teenager, not like I'm saying you should just go outside and talk to kids, but like, you know, the reality is that I think, and this is just like I have no data to back this up, but kids playing Roblox, right? Kids are hooked on Roblox like kid crack. I don't think it's translating to them dipping their toes into video games as much as I think video game makers are hoping. I think things like Fortnite may have a little bit more of an attach rate because a lot of people still will play that on a console and then kind of fall into things. And Fortnite also has a bunch of like IP and shit in it that people will discover. But I think so like Roblox having like one of the most played games ever on its platform, you know, I don't see that translating to a kid going out and buying Gears of War E-Day or whatever, you know? And I think the ones that like may be interested in gaming will start slow and do like the Genshin Impacts on their phone, you know, like the mobile stuff. So I don't know, like all I can say is that like, yes, it was like what I said in the previous news story. Things are changing, but at the very least, we still see wins. We still see games coming out that are selling and making money. We have big things like Baldur's Gate 3. We have things this year like Expedition 33, even weird, you know, things that you didn't think would appeal to mainstream audiences like a Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, like are successful games. And these are all examples of like the last year or so. So like things are still okay for like single player and more traditional, like regular old video games, right? But I think that when you see numbers like this, to me, it helps clarify a little bit more why you hear Sony and PlayStation trying to invest so much in live service bullshit games, right? Because that's where some of this is going. And that's, I think, where some of the younger audience is also trending. So I don't really have like a big smart conclusion to any of this, to be completely frank. And I'm also not like a professional analyst with stuff like this. I'm just talking off the cuff. But all I could say is like, if you're a parent, for the love of video games, fight for video games. Your kid might be attached to Roblox, whatever, but also maybe introduce them a little something else, okay? Like, hey, little Jimmy, I see you like Roblox. How about trying Persona 3? That's not a good example, but you know what I mean? Just try. Try and wean them off it. I am not here to tell you how to parent, but for the love of video games, give a kid a fucking copy of Final Fantasy X, all right? I'm sorry for cursing, but I love video games. I feel passionately about them, and it's been tricky lately with all the gloom and doom, with EA being gobbled up by that whole thing, with Game Pass going up, with just a lot, just the state of the world. It's tough, right? So I'm glad at least video games that I still like to play are releasing, but it's good to look at the wider world. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know where things are going. So let me know what you think. I'm usually a very optimistic person, but yeah, I apologize if this was a little bit of a bummer episode. But yeah, like I said, show your child Final Fantasy X, then show him 10 too, or don't do that. But anyway, I have not had coffee, if you can't tell. So let me know what you think in the comments about the news stories this week. The Xbox thing. Yes, the leak, whatever, whether or not it was true, but just the fact that it seems believable. Do you see Xbox going the way of Sega? Are you a hardcore Xbox fan? You probably just hate me but like, I don't know. Like, are you upset? Where are you at? Are you jumping ship? Are you sticking with Xbox till the bitter end? Is it even going to end? Let's talk about any of that. And also let's talk about the very interesting analysis from Circana, the analyst firm. And, you know, the 60% of US game players only buy 2 games or fewer per year. Let's chat about that. But let me know what you think about any of this. You can also yell at me on social media at Jake Baldino. Thank you. Every Wednesday, I do a 2 news story thing here to get you caught up. Then I'm on Friday news on Game Ranks doing everything. But here, I got videos planned for Little Nightmares 3 and Ghosts of Yotei, so keep your eyes peeled for that. I've yapped enough. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you. I'll see you in the next one. I'm Jake Baldino. Subscribe because video games, pizza's on me.